Gdynia, Poland, the second largest city in Pomerania, and in 2019, host of the nation's largest airshow. The third edition of Gdynia AeroBaltic was the biggest yet, with 7 hours of daily flying displays at Gdynia Sukhoi Airport, followed by a further 3 hours of dusk air displays at Gdynia City Beach. In this programme, we look at the highlights of both of the two sets of aerial displays, so let's take a look now at the lineup and running order. Kicking off the programme, we have Team Orlick of the Polish Air Force, 10 minutes in the Ukrainian Air Force Sukhoi Su-27, then the Polish Air Force Su-22 fitter in a quarter of an hour, and the Saudi Hawks right after that. Then into the night show, which concludes with the Aerosparx Display Team. The spectacular drone footage you're seeing here is the work of Alex Prinz. Operations, of course, were conducted with the approval of the Polish military, the airshow organisers, and participating display pilots, and the pilot was fully qualified too. Please always fly your UAV legally and sensibly. Now, Team Orlick begin their display with 4 PZL-130 Orlicks. Team Orlick were formed in 1998 and have displayed with varying numbers of aircraft, usually between 7 and 9, but for the last few seasons they've been displaying in smaller numbers while the Orlick fleet undergoes an upgrade programme. At the moment, Team Orlick are one of 2 Polish Air Force teams, the other being Team Iskra. But it won't stay that way for long. The TS-11 Iskra is due to be retired in 2020, and Team Iskra therefore likely have just a year or so left. In now for an opposition break. Despite being low on numbers this year, Team Orlick are Poland's main representatives on the international airshow stage, displaying in 8 countries this year, including France, Finland, Greece and Latvia.
Telefon w gotowości.
Uwaga! Rozpuszczamy, malujemy wielki bukiet.
At several of the larger shows they perform at, Team Orlick stage an Orlick memorial flight featuring 3 Orlicks and 2 T6 Harvards. Although the Polish Air Force never operated the Harvard, Polish pilots did use the T6 as a training aircraft while serving abroad during the Second World War. The Swedish Air Force historic flight provide our next 2 displays, and first up is the Saab SK37 Viggen. The Viggen made its first flight in 1967 and was only retired in 2005. It was, in many ways, quite a revolutionary aircraft. It was arguably Europe's most advanced in-service fighter aircraft for around a decade. It had exceptional short takeoff and landing capabilities, and it was the first canard-configured aircraft to be produced in significant quantity. Some 329 Viggens rolled out of the factory. This aircraft is one of 2 Viggens flown by the flight, and it is an SK37 two-seat training variant with no radar and reduced fuel capacity. And only 17 of these SK variant Viggens were ever produced. Another aircraft from the Swedish Air Force historic flight stable, the J-34 Hunter. This was the Swedish name for the Hawker Hunter Mark 50, which the Swedes operated between 1955 and 1969 when it was replaced by the Saab Draken. Sweden was one of 22 military operators of the Hunter, of which nearly 2,000 were built. One of Poland's premier civilian aerobatic teams now, the Firebirds. Formed in 2014, the Firebirds aerobatic team have now gone on to set up the Firebirds Flight Academy, a school specialising in aerobatic and upset recovery training. Their fleet includes the Extra 330 SC and two Extra 330 LCs, as you see here, as well as a Zlin Z50. Watch now for some perfectly synchronised stall turns. And now diving back towards show centre for an opposition break and then into opposition passes. And now for a very uncomfortable manoeuvre indeed. Two aircraft in mirror formation, one pulling positive G and the blood rushes to his feet, the other pushing negative G and the blood rushing to his head as the pair execute a very challenging inside-outside loop. At the time of the Firebirds' first display in 2014, the team didn't actually have a collective name, and so a competition was launched to find them one, and that, we know, something that wouldn't work in the UK where I'm from. And the incident I am of course referring to did inspire a real-life Planey McPlaneface, by the way. It's an Airbus A330 operated by Aer Lingus. The Ukrainian Air Force now taped the sky with their primary fighter aircraft. This particular display comes from Colonel Yuri Bulavka of the 831st Guards Tactical Aviation Brigade at Mirorod. Ukraine is believed to have between 17 and 20 flankers in its ageing inventory, which also includes the MiG-29, Su-24 and Su-25. And indeed, a Su-24 Fencer made a very rare international appearance in the static display at AeroBaltic this year. The Su-27 is powered by two Saturn AL-31F engines, each producing some 27,600 pounds of thrust with reheat. And these engines aren't just incredibly powerful, they are also extremely rugged. Most jet engines don't like having air pass through them backwards, as it can cause engine flameout, but the Saturn AL-31 can take it. And that allows Colonel Bulavka to demonstrate this impressive manoeuvre, the tail slide. A bit of vapour there forming on the top surface of the wing during this high G turn, and vapour comes about when the area of low pressure above the wing cools the air below its dew point, causing the water within it to condense. Now in for a low-speed, high-alpha pass. The flanker now comes in for its final manoeuvre, followed by a spectacular flare dump. And you can see much more of this display in a separate video on our YouTube channel. The sole contribution now from the Polish Navy, with a brief search and rescue demonstration from this PZL W3RM Anaconda. This multi-purpose helicopter made its first flight in 1979 and was the first helicopter to be entirely built in Poland. Around 150 have been constructed, and they are operated by 11 nations. Although this W3RM variant for the Polish Navy is one of just 8 of its kind. She's behind us. The Arctic Eagles aerobatic team are next into the box with their mix of aerobatic biplanes, the Christen Eagle 2, Pitts S1S, Pitts Model 12 and Ultimate 10-300. The Arctic Eagles were formed as a 3-ship team in 2013 and added a 4th aircraft in 2016. The Arctic Eagle's display was perhaps a little higher than some others, but nonetheless proved interesting to watch, not least thanks to these very impressive double opposition loops. And it's very rare nowadays to look at an aerobatic manoeuvre and think, wow, I don't think I've ever seen that done before. This certainly was an exception to that rule. One of the most anticipated displays for we international visitors had to be the Polish Air Force Sukhoi Su-22M-4 fitter. This display is a solo version of the Polish Air Force's two-ship fitter tactical demonstration, but nonetheless it was a rare treat to see this swing-wing Soviet fighter bomber in the air. Poland's 30 or so fitters are operated by the 40th Aviation Squadron of the 1st Tactical Aviation Wing in Swindwin, and it's not clear how much longer these venerable fighters could remain in Polish service. Indeed, of the 30 or so air arms which have at times operated the fitter, only 9 remain today. Onto the stars of the show now, the Saudi Hawks flying 7 BAE Hawk Mark 65As. And if you think the choice of aircraft, the paint scheme, and even some of the display manoeuvres look familiar, you might be right, as the Saudi Hawks have been extensively trained by former members of the Red Arrows, meaning there is a very strong resemblance between the two teams. Probably fair to say, though, that the Tutee hasn't yet overtaken the Tutor. The display is quite distant at times and not quite as seamless as that of many other jet teams, but still it features some very dynamic and nicely executed manoeuvres. The Saudi Hawks were formed as a 6-ship team in 1998, making their European debut at Air Power Zeltweg in 2011 in Austria. This is the team's 5th trip to Europe, and their 2nd since expanding to a 7-ship. It is the eventual goal of the Saudi Hawks to fly 9 aircraft. This is the Saudi Hawk's take on the Goose, an inverted Vic shape of 5 aircraft crossing with the synchro pair. And of course the synchro pair perform all the opposition manoeuvres you'd expect as well. The Saudi Hawks end their display with the world's largest piece of skywriting, creating the Saudi national symbol of a palm tree crossed with 2 swords.
But most of all, we hope you've enjoyed watching our show. Thank you once again.
Again, you can see more from that display in an individual video on our YouTube channel if you wish. But now it's time to head to the seaside for the Twilight Pyrotechnic shows. Here, Marek Choim just getting ready in his extra 330 SC. The venue is Gdynia City Beach, seen here from our vantage point on the roof of the Morski University. And here comes Jelani, probably Poland's most famous civilian aerobatic team. Jelani have a huge fleet of Zlin Z50s, Zlin Z526s, an extra 300 LC and an MDM-1 Fox glider. And they have performed many displays in larger formations of up to 6 aircraft in the past. But today they perform in smaller groups, such as with this Z50 pair.
Dzisiejszego dnia troszeczkę na niebie już mamy słońca, więc nie widzimy tego charakterystycznego takiego gigantowego. W tej chwili żelazna lustrzanka.
No i w tej lustrzance nawet teraz powoli wchodzą w prawy zakręt, co łatwe nie jest.
No łatwe nie jest, zdecydowanie, a tym bardziej tutaj jednak w tej strefie pokazu, która jest dosyć ciasna z racji na umiejscowienie w tym takim cięciu.
The Z50 is a Czechoslovak aerobatic aircraft which first flew in 1975, and the following year one of them claimed 3rd place in the World Aerobatic Championships. Perhaps most famously, it was also used by the Flying Bulls aerobatic team from 1989 until it was superseded by the XA42 in 2016. Marek Choim now enters the box flying his extra 330 SC. Marek is a member of the Polish national aerobatic team and has been flying at air shows and aerobatic competitions since 2013. In that time, he's performed across Europe as well as in the Middle East. And last year, that included performing the world's first pyro pylon run over water on Saudi Arabia's National Day in Dammam. The aircraft, the Extra-330 SC, is capable of pulling plus or minus 10 G, flying at 408 km per hour in a dive and rolling at some 420 degrees per second. The Swedish airshow ace Johan Gustafsson now commences his display in the Thorpe T80. The T80 is a two-seat kit plane designed in 1963, powered by surplus Lycoming 0290 engines used in military ground power units. It's one of several aircraft Johan has displayed all around the world, including the SZ-59 Acro glider and the Piper J3 Cub, all of which have been modified to carry pyrotechnics. Although only 27 years of age, Johan is a 2-time World Glider Aerobatic Champion at the advanced level and a well-known airshow pilot. He's performed across Europe and twice at the Australian International Airshow in Avalon. We end the programme with the Aerosparx Display Team from the UK, flying their 2 Grob 109B motor gliders. It was yet another scintillating display served up by the organisers of Gdynia AeroBaltic 2019. Just 2 years after the show was created, AeroBaltic succeeded in bringing together one of the most varied lineups of aircraft at any European airshow this year, packed with an enviable number of rare and elusive displays. AeroBaltic's position as one of Europe's premier airshows now seems guaranteed. From me, Adam Landau, goodbye for now.